Yeah, okay, time to live free. Plenty goals I'm achieving. Some real life topics and talking financial freedom. Mindset, soul and love, everything in between. This is Freedom Podcast. Tune in, live free. Hey, got my mindset right and I got the drive. Planning one day, no more job, no more 9 to 5. Love, money, mind. Love, money, mind. This is freedom. Tune in, cause it's going down. Woo!
Hi, this is Anna and welcome to another episode of your Freedom Podcast. In this episode, I interview Michael O'Brien. Breathe in, breathe out. It's time to stress less and pause, breathe and reflect with Michael O'Brien. Michael is a qualified meditation teacher, executive coach, endurance athlete and creator of the Pause, Breathe, Reflect meditation relaxation app. He's created this app. He's got an inspiring story to tell where he had a horrific near-death cycling accident and he's really turned his life around, and you're going to absolutely love this episode. So hi, Michael, it is great to have you on the show.
Yeah, Anna, thanks for having me on. I've been looking forward to this all week. Perfect way to finish up the week sitting down with you.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? Reading all about you and all the great stuff you're doing, I know you've got this awesome app that we're going to share with everybody. But you know, if you'd spoken to me 10 years ago, I'd have probably thought meditation, that's a bit woo-woo. Nah, not for me. I'm too busy for that. I'm fine, you know. But going through some of my troubles and the repetitive legal battle of, I think it was 33 court hearings in total.
Wow.
I suffered with a lot of, you know, undeniable anxiety. I was like, yeah, I'm fine. And then I'd wake up in the night, you know, with palpitations and hot sweats and things like that. And I didn't sleep very well. And I started to introduce meditation into my life, just on lots of different people recommending. I thought, oh, what's all this about, you know? And now it's interesting that now I still, because I meditate at the end of an evening, not always, as in it's not always, and sometimes I do it other periods of time as well. But 9 times out of 10, it's at the end of an evening when I'm in the bath. I have this ritual because I was trying to get into this pattern or habit of being able to wind down from the day. And now I feel like I've added extra things to it that I'm like, you know, got all the candles and I have like bath salts, and I get all these different types of bath salts now, and it's really just for relaxation now, whereas back then it was to help me with my anxiety and stress. But I noticed myself that if I've missed out that step, you know, say I've been up doing some work late and I think, oh, I'm just gonna have a quick shower, I feel like I've missed out, you know, I feel like I've missed out on that ritual or routine that I have. So I really do wish I'd met you back in 2015, because I know that your sort of expertise with you being like, you know, a meditation and mindfulness teacher, it would have been great to have met you back then when I was like, what the hell is going on in my life, you know? So great to have you on the show.
Oh, it's awesome. It's awesome to be here. And I got to give you credit for creating a really great bedtime routine. Because we parents know that we have a bedtime routine for our kids as a way to help them relax so they can go to sleep and we can get on with the rest of the evening and chores and all that stuff like that. But when we become adults, we forget about the importance of having a bedtime routine to like sort of shut it all down and down regulate our body and slow down our heart rate and turn off our mind a little bit so we can get a good night's sleep. So good on you for coming up with a good bedtime routine. And yeah, if we met like 21 years ago when I first came into mindfulness, I would have said the same thing you did. That this is a bunch of woo-woo. It's like a hippie thing. It's soft. It doesn't work. I ain't gonna do it. I don't have time to do it. All that jazz. So I can totally appreciate where you were at back in 2015 and really where a lot of people are at current day, because there's still a whole bunch of people on this planet that think it's like, really? No, I don't know. It seems a little weird. I don't think I'm going to do it.
Definitely. But I also think since the pandemic, there are a lot more people that are suffering with anxiety that probably don't identify it as anxiety, just see it as, I think, this digital world that we're in now. Even if you have happiness in your life, there is still that level of stress as well, isn't there, that people are living under and not identifying that they could do something about it to relieve it, really. They just
I
accept
think
it.
that, yeah, I think that's really true. I think obviously the pandemic, I still don't think we've really processed what we went through. All
Mm,
the isolation, all the loss, um, the lack of control, the chaos, all of that. So I don't think we've really, as a planet, fully processed it. Maybe some communities have, doubt many countries have, to really think through, like, okay, what did we go through? And also, what habits did we create during the pandemic that might be healthy? Because a lot of people decided to live life differently because of it.
mm,
But there was so much stress. I think a lot of people have developed some unhealthy ways of dealing with their stress.
yeah,
And now it's just sort of normal, or this sense of like, I have this anxious feeling, but it's just like, well, it's just, that's what life is. And it doesn't have to be that way. So I think we pack a lot in the backpacks that we carry around, a lot of the
mm,
rocks and boulders and stones and pebbles. And we try to numb our pain and numb our suffering. And that's not a healthy way of dealing with it. So through mindfulness and some other contemplative practices and just movement in general, we can deal with, what's causing us pain and suffering in a healthier way. So, and
yeah,
also just deal with everyday stresses. There's a
absolutely.
saying, that you can't stop the waves in the ocean, but you can learn how to surf. And
Mm,
for me, mindfulness and mindfulness meditation is a way to surf the waves of stress. So you
yeah,
can meet them and deal with them and not get, you know, toppled over into the ocean.
yeah, exactly, exactly. It is because we don't know what's around the corner as well, do we? It's sometimes having a toolbox of things that, allows us to kind of get through stuff or deal with stuff, and or sort of things that pop up in our day-to-day sort of stresses of life, really. I know that like you said, 21 years ago, you would have probably said the same about, it all being a little bit woo-woo for you. What kind of made you change? I want you to open up and share your story if you're comfortable to do. What happened to make you sort of change that mindset?
Yeah, so it was a big event. And I'll start here by saying that a lot of people ask me, like, do you have to go through something like you went through in order to change? And my answer is absolutely no, you don't have to. I think the universe, Mother Earth, um, God, if you will, whoever fills up your mug in the morning,
Yeah.
they give us signs. And back before 2001, I think the universe was giving me a lot of signs. I was just too dang busy to pay attention.
Yeah.
So I was 33 at the time, a young father. Our girls were 3.5 years old, 7 months old, married 7 years. Come Sunday, we'll be married 29 years. So that
Wow.
time has passed along very beautifully. And I was a marketing director for my company's biggest product. It was a healthcare company. We had a drug for Alzheimer's disease. So I had a pretty big job in a relatively small pond. And I thought success was all about climbing the corporate ladder and,
Mm,
gathering up material possessions, a lot like how a lot of people live today. You want status, you want your voice to be heard, you think that new car is going to make you happy, all that
mhm,
jazz. I'm also have been an avid cyclist since the day I came off of training wheels, where we'll talk about freedom, but I thought in that moment I had freedom to go anywhere in the world, just
mm,
explore. So I brought my bike out to an offsite meeting in New Mexico here in the States. And on the morning of July 11th, I came around a bend and a Ford Explorer, an SUV, was coming at me fully into my lane,
Oh,
going about 40 miles an hour, and hit me head on. And Anna, that morning, I remember like all the sounds, like the sound of me hitting his grill and the sound of me going into and through the windshield. I
wow.
still can hear the screech of his brakes. And then I made this thud when I came to the asphalt below. And of course, that knocked me unconscious. But when I regained consciousness, I knew I was in trouble. Like my whole body hurt. There was a whole bunch of adrenaline. I was probably in shock. I was surrounded by emergency
Yeah,
support people like police and fire. And I just remember like trying to will myself to remain conscious, not to fall asleep, because I thought if I did, I might not wake up again. And I couldn't control the situation, as funny as that
yeah,
sounds. I was like, and I was trying to, make jokes to cut the tension. I even asked the EMTs, how's my bike? And they were like, that's a question only other cyclists can truly appreciate. Like we crash and we want to know how our bike is. And they eventually flew me to the city of Albuquerque in New Mexico. And my first surgery was about 12, 13 hours.
wow.
And the next 4 or 5 days I spent in the ICU. I spent a total initially about 3.5 months, close to 4 months in the hospital. And when I came out of the ICU, I learned the doctors had told my wife, we're not really sure how your husband survived. Had he been 10 years older, not in shape, he would have passed away before he got to the hospital, because my femoral artery in my left leg was severed or lacerated with all the different broken bones and stuff like that. So I was losing a lot of blood pretty quickly. And they painted this grim picture of my life, that it would be more surgeries, more rehab. I would have to probably walk with a limp. I would probably never get back on the bike again. So I got really angry and really almost revengeful. And
Mm,
I didn't, I didn't know what to do. All of it felt so overwhelming. And really, I thought my identity was destroyed in that accident. So I didn't know who I was going to become. Fast forward a bit, I had a moment. They eventually flew me back to New Jersey, where I live today. And I knew that I had to heal my mind. I had to slow things down in order to heal my body, because I just wanted to get home. I wanted to get out of the hospital. I wanted to feel normal again. I
mm,
wanted to be able to use the bathroom by myself, because I really couldn't do that there. And that's a pretty low point on the dignity
yeah.
scale when you need help doing the basic things like using the toilet or showering. And
Mm,
I wanted to feel normal. I wanted to smell normal things like our
mm,
home. And so I knew enough as an athlete that the breath was important. So one morning I found a quiet place in the hospital and I did a box breathing pattern. Just inhale for a count of 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4. And I did that for about 5 minutes. And I started calling those my pause, breathe, reflect breaks. And I had a good day that day. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do it again the next day.
mm.
And then I did it again the day after. And then I weaved some of them in throughout the day. And that it became a beautiful habit over time. And that was my first experience with like breath work and mindfulness. Because back then, too, just like we mentioned, I thought it was crazy. I was like, I'm not
Yeah,
going to do this.
yeah.
And I didn't want to tell anyone I was doing it, because
You didn't want to
I
be
was
like
already,
criticized.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I don't want to be
Especially,
judged. I was
especially in
already,
a medical like environment as well, where it's,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
it's
It
just
was,
isn't it, really to improve situation. You just get kind of it. Could interestingly, when you open that part of the story, is that I used to work for Pfizer for 12 years. So we were both in a similar industry. So I understand when you were saying about how, you have the company car and the big bonuses and we're moving up the career ladder. That was me before I hit my challenge. So I was like nodding away, like I totally understand this, or And so we understand that sometimes I think the medical industry see a lot of holistic things as being a bit, criticize some of it, although some of them could be open-minded to it, but a lot like kind of poo-poo it a little bit. So I can imagine you keeping that to yourself because it was working for you, and you're like, I'm just going to see how this progresses before I let anyone know I'm doing it. Really.
Absolutely. And so back in the day, like my company had a co-promote agreement with Pfizer back in the day. So we
Right.
partnered on it. So I was the head of sales. I was the head of marketing. And so when I eventually got out of the hospital and went back to my corporate job, like there was no way I was going to tell my corporate people I'm doing this because
Mm.
they they already saw me as a bit broken from the accident, and like they wondered like is he gonna turn this around? Is like,
Mm.
I was going to rehab every day once I got back home, and they had a lot of questions. They were being nice. They weren't really asking me these questions directly, but I could get a sense that they were talking about my health behind my back.
Yeah.
So, going to a sales meeting and saying, okay, everyone, we're going to do some breathing. Back in 2002, 2003, people would probably think I had lost it, right? And
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
okay, you've lost
Exactly.
your edge. And so I kept this a real secret, but this ability to like slow down, just hit the pause button and come back to our breath. And this is key, that point of reflection. In the pause, breathe, reflect, the reflect is the essential part of it because it really gave me some space to think about how do I want to show up? How do I want to be? What kind of ripple do I want to put into the world? Or what am I grateful for in this moment? So it helped me with my mindset, it helped me shift my perspective. So I could eventually, get on my feet again. I got back home, I had more surgeries. And then downstream from all this, I found mindfulness based stress reduction, which is a practice that was developed by John Kabat-Zinn here in the States. So he studied in the East and brought a lot of the Buddhist teaching and yoga and mindfulness to the West. But he is a PhD, worked at the University of Massachusetts Medical Center, and he incorporated mindfulness-based stress reduction into the medical department, the medicine department.
Right.
And
Brilliant.
so to help with anxiety and depression and pain management and a whole bunch of other conditions or diseases that have been shown to benefit, to the symptoms can be alleviated through mindfulness. And I found that to be the case for me too, that I was able to come off of pain meds and really come off of some of those medications that were trying to make me more comfortable just through my breath work, through my mindfulness.
Yeah.
So
Brilliant.
I studied MBSR, and that's what I eventually decided to do my formal training with. So I'm formally trained as an MBSR teacher. Now back then and even current day with MBSR, the typical practice is 45 minutes a day,
Wow.
which I had that time back then because I was in the hospital or I was doing rehab. So I had enough of that freedom to be able to do that. But you fast forward to current day, we're busier than ever.
Mm.
Back in 2000, 2001, 2, 3, 4, there was no social media. There weren't some of the shiny objects that
Yeah,
pull
exactly.
our attention away. And so I think current day, especially coming out of the pandemic, we're busier than ever. So if I go to people and say, okay, here's the practice, 45 minutes a day, they're like, thanks, but no thanks. I don't have time for that.
Mm.
Most people say they don't even have time for 10 minutes. So what I've done with my practice is make it micro in duration. So small little steps that you can do consistently over time as a way to create a healthier habit and stress less and live more and deal with all those waves in the ocean that keep on coming at us.
I think it's also harder to refuse to agree to do that as well. If someone advised you to do it, if you say, look, it's a couple of minutes a day, you know, the ego is going to come in, because you're going to look a bit stupid if you say, "Well, I haven't got a couple of minutes." Do
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Whereas it's like anything that we do, whether it's like a healthy diet and things like that. We always put excuses for kind of new changes or behaviours that we want to put in. So I really love that, because I think that anyone could agree that they have got a minute or a couple of minutes a day to do that.
I hope so. Yeah. So that's the goal. My overall vision for the world is for the 8 billion of us to take at least 1 minute every day to hit pause, have a few healthy inhales and exhales, and then take a moment to reflect, just like a minute, and be like,
Mm,
okay, what's called for now? How do I want to show up? How do I want to interact with each other? How do I want to interact with myself? The reflection can take on many forms,
yeah.
but I really believe if 8 billion of us just hit pause, maybe all at the same time, a little hard to do with time zones, but the concept of like, if we just paused, like what could happen? And in a lot of ways, we saw what could happen in the early days of COVID, where everything stopped and it felt like the whole planet took a big breath out.
Yeah,
And we saw that Mother Nature really responded. Like
exactly.
in a matter of just weeks, she was a much happier gal. And
Yeah,
I think in the early days of COVID, even though there was a lot of confusion and chaos and worry, there was this peacefulness in some ways
definitely. Yeah.
of like, oh wow, okay. And then we were like, whoa, what? Okay, let's get back on the hamster wheel and get on Zoom and Microsoft Teams and
Yeah.
like,
It was.
all that stuff. And so that moment was fleeting, and I wish it lasted maybe a little bit longer. But I think we have shown what can happen if we just all pause for a bit, take
Yeah,
a few healthy breaths, and just be a little intentional about how we're living.
yeah, absolutely. Totally. I can relate to absolutely everything you were saying then. Because I remember that first lockdown here, and everybody was just like, wow, we've never paused before. You know, people were doing more, like you say, even if it was just reorganizing their home, taking time to do something like that, or spending more time as a family. And, you know, I remember everything that was happening with like our ecosystem, and hearing more birds outside, and you know, things were nature, like you say, Mother Nature was doing its thing, and it was actually quite a beautiful moment. And then of course we all just were, like you say, finding solutions to get back to it. So I think it's great what you're doing. Tell us about the app that you developed, because I know this is what sounds really, really cool, that people could actually have a tool to be able to implement some of these teachings that you've put together.
Yeah, so I created the app at the end of last year. It's called Pause, Breathe, Reflect. Pretty easy. PBR for short, and people can find it on the Apple Store or Google Play. And I really thought about it as I rode my bike across the country last year, across America. So I did that ride to celebrate life. And,
Yeah.
I like to do big things on the anniversary of my accident. I call my accident day my last bad day, because it's all about recognizing that we're all going through moments. And if I have people in my life who I love and who love me back, I can't call a whole day a bad day. I might have bad moments or angry moments or sad moments, but I want to be careful with the labels I choose and how I look at my days. So
Yeah.
I consider that one my last bad one. And so fast forward, I rode my bike across the country and I was doing all these meditations on the social media app called Clubhouse.
Yeah.
And we had about 10,000 people in our club. And I was doing 5-minute practices 4 times a day, every day through all of the pandemic. And I was like, why am I doing this on Clubhouse's platform? I could just create an app and create my own space, for like-hearted humans to come in and have community and stress less and live more. So on the ride across the country, I was thinking about, okay, what do I want the experience to be for all the members of the app? And I wanted it to be about nature and simple and relatable. I believe, Anna, that you can take everyday moments in life and turn them into mindful moments. So it might be at a traffic light or washing dishes or in an elevator or a minute before your next meeting, or putting on socks, something as silly as that. So there's a lot of relatable meditations there that are tied back to everyday things. There's some more maybe heavier topics like grief or imposter syndrome or self-doubt. There are practices like that. There's unguided practices. So we came up with this whole idea of what to build. And then when I came back from the trip, we got to work building it. So we would have a really nice app for people. And a lot of folks have said, they've referenced other apps out there. And my belief is that this market, as far as like meditation apps, because a lot of people said, you're doing a meditation app? There's so many of them out there. And I'm like, yeah, but there needs to be so many out there because we need more people practicing mindfulness. Probably the same with your podcast. A lot of people say, oh, there's so many podcasts out there.
Yeah,
exactly. Why do it? And, because someone needs to hear the message from you in the way that you, Anna, can only say it, right? So they want to make that connection. And that's how I feel about teaching mindfulness, is that we need a lot of teachers and we need a lot of people stepping into this way of life to bring more love and peace and healing to our planet. And one cool thing about our app that's different than a lot of other apps is each day during the week, I lead a live practice via Zoom. So it's not just you and your app in your apartment, but you can come into community and we do a practice. It's about a 7-minute practice with space for folks to share and connect and build community and build belonging. Because what I think we are thirsty for as people is a sense of belonging, and belonging to a community of like-hearted people, not necessarily like-minded people, but like-hearted people. So we can think differently. We can bring different lived experiences to our conversations. But if we're coming from a really loving, compassionate place in our heart, then we can create some really wonderful bonds. And coming out of the pandemic, I just feel that we're all searching for that sense of belonging. So the app allows people to do that as well.
I think I may have been in one of your Clubhouse rooms, because I remember being obsessed with Clubhouse, and it was that pandemic year. It must have been 2020.
Yeah, it was 2020. It started in 2020, and
I remember going
I was there
to meditate. I remember going into the meditation room. There was there was loads of different rooms then. The app has completely changed now. I think it's quite good, isn't it, that you went on that and it gave you the idea to develop your app. Because I was going to ask you, if there's people listening to this, what tips would you give them to start doing mindfulness? But you know what? I think the tip is go and check out the app. Because when you covered about all the different, it might just be when you're washing the dishes or putting on your socks and those kind of things, or it could be you are struggling with lack of belief and things like that. So it sounds like there's lots of resources in there that would help people start that process. So I think I'll change the question into, what would you say to people who are listening to this that are feeling like we did when we thought mindfulness was a bit of a waste of time?
Yes. So I think for those people, I would invite them just to notice like what it feels like just to, slow down and connect with their breath. So that's just one. It feels good when they can take a breath. I would probably also invite them in, depending on how they're hardwired as a person, some people love to read some of the medical research, and there's like reams and reams of studies now of medical research that shows the benefits of mindfulness and meditation in helping people stress less. But here's the thing I would really say is like, what do you have to lose, right? Right now, you are feeling the burden of carrying around too much stress. Your fuse might be a little bit shorter than you desire. And when our fuse is shorter than desired, we usually react not in a great way around the people we love the most, right? We want to get more things done. We're having a hard time focusing. We might have a narrowing of our perspective. So mindfulness allows us to open up our awareness. It helps us focus when we need to focus, and gives us this ability to meet our moments with some level of calm, like giving it some space. So what do you have to lose? You spend a minute a day connecting with your breath. You try it on for a few weeks. And let's say you don't like it. It doesn't do it for you. Then all you've lost is a few minutes connecting with your breath. And that's about it. So, it's really about this open invitation to experience life differently and to treat the suffering or pain or hurt or however you want to phrase it in a healthy way. We can't get some of the things done that we want to get done if we're hurting, if we're struggling, and we're all going through something. That's the thing. You talk to people all the time in your line of work on the podcast. The most successful people out there that look like they have this charmed life on Instagram, they're going through stuff. We're all going through stuff. So let's try to treat that stuff in a healthy way and not numb it away or, ignore it or resist it.
Yeah.
Mindfulness allows us to have a different relationship with it, so it doesn't have such a hold on us, so we can actually get more things done. Like one of my mantras is slow is fast. When we slow it down just a bit, not stop, but slow it down just a bit, we can invite flow into our lives.
Yeah.
And when we have flow, we end up having more joy with our experiences. And a lot of times we go faster and we put out higher quality work.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. 100% agree with that. So for those of you listening, what have you got to lose? And also for those of you watching us on YouTube, hi. In the comments below, you will see the link to Michael's app. Remind me of the name. It's Pause, Breathe, Reflect, isn't it?
Yeah, just like the mug says for the people on YouTube, it's pause, breathe, reflect. It's pretty easy. As soon as you start typing it into the search on Apple, the app store on Apple and Google Play, it comes right up. And you can download it and start to try a few of the shorter meditations right off the rip, and then try to join us for a live meditation and just get a sense of what it feels like to be in a community of like-hearted people. For me, I consider it a brave space where everyone is welcome. So doesn't matter who you love, who you pray to, who you vote for, or where you live, your experiences. I want as many people to come into our space as possible, because I know it sends a beautiful ripple out into the world. A ripple of goodness. And we need that. There's so much other nonsense being rippled by folks that want to divide us. For folks out there that want to come together, that know that we're connected, if not we're all one, this gives them an opportunity to have that nourishment each and every day.
Love that. So if you are watching us on YouTube, you'll be able to find the link in the comments section. If you're listening to us on any of the podcasting channels, The details will be in the show notes, and all the available details to reach out to Michael directly with his socials and websites and stuff. I also wanted to the one thing I normally on my podcast interviews open up with this, and I just realized we didn't talk about it, but with me putting this podcast together and it being called Your Freedom Podcast, I debated on the name for so long because everything with the word freedom is usually sort of mixed up with sort of, money and, hey, freedom in 90 days. I kept coming back to the word freedom because at the time it was what I was personally going through. And for me, I put these 3 pillars together, and I just wondered whether, because I normally open up with this, and I wondered whether you relate to any of these. Freedom in love is all around self-care and the love that we give out to the world. So with everything that we've talked about with the app and mindfulness and meditation thing, it really fits nicely for me. Because when I had these 3 pillars gave me equilibrium, because when one of them was sort of I was neglecting, the seesaw balance wasn't right. So when I was neglecting myself and not taking care, and like I was saying to you, I was in denial that I was stressed and just carrying on giving to my kids and all that kind of stuff and not actually taking any pause moments, I was neglecting myself. So freedom in love is really, really important. Freedom in money is also important, and it's not about the whole million in 90 days. But actually, when I was struggling financially, it wasn't innate, it was giving me anxiety and stress. And so now, with not having those pressures and being able to choose sort of like the lifestyle I can have, it gives me less pressure. And then mind was the final pillar, I suppose. So freedom in mind, which I think the word mind doesn't really do it justice, but it was more, it's not about being positive every single minute of the day. It's just really having that awareness and like being able to kind of go to your toolbox of things and maybe actually release all of that upset if something tragic's happened in your life, but then be able to, deal with it and unpack it and grow from it, really. So I just thought, before I ask you the question that I always ask everybody about, what does freedom mean to you, that do you relate to any of those pillars? And I saw you nodding, but for those that are listening on the podcast channels, I just wondered if you related to any of those.
Totally. I think those pillars are like spot on. Like when it comes to the money one, as a point in my early career, I'd be filled with anxiety going to the cash machine. Now, through COVID, we're using less and less money, actual money in cash. Now it's all like Apple Pay or credit cards. But when you get cash out of the ATM, I would hate the whole experience. I'd be like, oh, what's my balance? And for me, this money freedom thing was having enough space or having enough in my bank account where I didn't feel that way.
Yeah.
It wasn't about, I want $1 million or whatever.
Exactly.
I just wanted a peace of mind, I think, to be able to go and feel like, okay, I have some money to live my life. And when I didn't have that, it was so debilitating. Like it just, it would ruin my days. And this was when I was really young. And the whole thing around mind too, is just, it's the spaciousness, freedom, the spaciousness to be able to hold multiple thoughts in our head at the same time. So we can have a day where we feel a lot of joy and happiness, but there's also space maybe for some sadness. So even this morning here, like I read the paper and there were things that made me really happy. And there were some things that made me really concerned. And I didn't have to toggle to like one or the other, like just be happy or go down a spiral or rabbit hole being like, the world's ending. So it's about having space to say, there are things to care about and be concerned about, action that can take place. And I have enough space in my mind and also in my heart to know that there's joy and happiness in the world. I can do both. And so, I love those pillars. Spot on.
It's funny you should say that, because I had a therapist for a while, like a talking therapist, and she made me realize that exact point. she made me realize that I was trying to be this perfect person and that I was happy all the time. And actually it was fine to be able to go, actually, I feel a bit sad or that, and that's just a moment in time, but I also feel both, you know what I mean? So I think sometimes we, again, I not to, but I don't agree with the word blame sometimes, but this digital world that we're in, or this marketed world that we're in, we see all of this happy, sometimes false lifestyle that we portray we need to be, and actually we just need to be ourselves, whatever that is, and that's fine. And recognize, like you say, that there are going to be some sad things and some happy things, and that's okay. So yeah, it's a really, really big point that I realise. So I want to reinforce it for people listening. It's been great having this conversation. I feel like I could carry on for another hour, but I need to wrap things up. So really inspiring to hear your story, and interestingly that you're from a similar background as me as well. And you know, I think really my message is don't allow a huge wake-up call to happen. Just, you know, don't, you know, what was the phrase that you said is, I'm now trying to remember, don't just, you know, what's the harm in trying? Sorry, what's the harm in trying?
Yeah, what do you have to lose?
Yeah.
What do you have to lose? And it might just help you prevent a bad moment from turning into a bad day. And
absolutely.
And that's part of surfing the waves of the ocean. And so, yeah, so I completely agree with you, Anna. We could go on for hours because we have a lot in common. It was really cool to hang with you.
Yeah. I like how you put that a lot more succinctly than me. So thank you for saving me on that one. I always ask everybody, what does freedom mean to you? And I love the answers to this because there's no right or wrong, and it means different things, different people. And actually, if I was asked it 10 years ago, my answer probably would have been a lot different to now. So what does freedom mean to you, Michael?
In a word, possibilities.
I love that.
Spaciousness and openness. As I mentioned earlier in our conversation, when I came off of training wheels on my bike for the first time, I thought I could go anywhere. Like I had so many possibilities, that I had freedom from my parents and I could explore. And, you know, for me, that freedom is really around giving every human a chance to step into all the possibilities that life provides. And that's what I hope mindfulness does for so many people, is that they do the practice and it opens up their awareness. And we still have work to do to break down some systematic barriers, but to provide more freedom to more people. But to me, it's all about possibilities.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. That's fab. You're an inspiring guy. It's been great to meet you, and great to have you on the show. And I look forward to diving deeper into your pause, breathe, react. Is it react? Reflect.
Yes. Yeah. It reflects so you don't react.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, look forward to it. And it's been great to have you on the show. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Anna. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Your Freedom Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe on iTunes and subscribe on my YouTube channel. And if you want to get more freedom in your life, then come and join Your Freedom Project Facebook group, which the link is below in the comments section. And I am giving you a copy of my visualization manifesting book. So manifest more freedom in your life and live the life of your dreams.
Hey, thank you for listening. Hope you had a blast. Here to elevate your life. It's the Freedom Podcast. Love, money, mind. Love, money, mind. Wanna see you all win. Wanna see you all shine. Just make sure that you subscribe. Bringing good vibes. Join the Facebook group. Now it's time to change your life. Hope you come back. Right now is the chance. This is an experience. It's the Freedom Podcast. Hey.